So a lot of writers believe this myth that they're going to take this huge leap forward in their skill set if only they can find the right class or the right mentor or the right writing technique or something like that. But honestly, writers get better incrementally. Just small little things day by day by day is what really improves you as a writer. And now getting 1% better every single day might not sound like a lot, but if you only improve at writing 1% per day, by the end of the year, you are going to be 37 times better as a writer. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 9 things you should do every day to improve your writing skills. So let's take a look at the first one, which is the imitation game. I want you to pick a paragraph from a writer you admire, just a paragraph, and I want you to study it. Study the beats, study what they're doing in every single sentence, whether they're using thoughts or whether they're going through description or whether there's dialogue, and then try to rewrite it in your own voice for your own book with your own characters. It'll be the same structure, it'll be the same emotional beats, but it'll be your story. And by the way, this is not some exercise I'm just pulling out of my keister. This is an actual practice we do inside Bookfox Lab. Now, sometimes people will just copy the paragraph exactly. They will just type out those exact words. This isn't a bad strategy. Hunter S. Thompson used this. He typed out all of A Farewell to Arms and also The Great Gatsby just to feel what it was like to write at that level. But usually I recommend more of a W. Somerset Maugham technique. He wrote in his book, The Summing Up, that he spent years imitating writers that he really admired, practicing their sentences and their paragraphs just like a pianist might practice scales. So what are common mistakes when writers do this? Sometimes they pick a section that's too long. You really don't need a giant chunk of a page or something. You need, a 5 to 7 sentence paragraph. And if you want a little variation on this exercise, you can also try it with dialogue between 2 characters and try to imitate the beats of that dialogue back and forth. Now, I know that some writers feel like this is too imitative, that doing this sort of exercise will pollute their voice. But really, our style as a writer is a composite of everything that we've ever read. So what this is doing is it's teaching you one particular style, and then you're going to filter that into your natural style as a writer. There are only 4 days left before we start at the next cohort of Bookfox Lab. Last time we did run out of spaces and we had to turn people away. So if you've been thinking about joining, I would recommend starting the application process now. Link is in the description, so go ahead and check that out. The second way that you can get 1% better at writing every single day is to generate 1 plot per day that you'll never write. So every day, come up with a novel premise, and it doesn't have to be long, right? I'm talking like 1 or 2 sentences. And guess what? This is a novel that you're probably not going to write. You're just practicing coming up with novel ideas. I've actually done this 3 times for Bookfox blog posts, and this was, pre-AI before I could just spit out ideas for you. I just sat down and I did it in 1 sitting. And in about 3 hours, I came up with 100 possible novel ideas. You don't have to do it in 1 sitting. I mean, I actually think it's easier if you just do it daily. But why would you want to do something like this? What it really is a challenge and a test for your creativity. People talk so much about IQ tests, which test your spatial intelligence or your verbal intelligence, but not as many people talk about creativity tests. And this kind of test is like going to the gym for your creativity. If every single day you're challenging yourself to come up with a new idea for a novel, you're going to get much better at both coming up with ideas and also judging which ideas are good and which ideas are bad. It is an underrated writing skill to be able to write a good blurb, a good 2 sentences that explain the core of what a novel is about and make the reader want to read it. Now, a side benefit of doing this sort of exercise is I guarantee if you come up with 50 of these or 60 of these or 100 of these, you're going to come up with at least 1 or 2 that are going to stick in your brain, and you're going to think, actually someday I do want to write this one. So I'll show you 2 examples that I came up with years ago, and I framed the second sentence as a question because these were designed to get other people writing, but you don't have to do it that way. So a 7-person family is part of this bluegrass band touring around, and then one of their family members dies. So how does that story develop? What happens to the family? How do they fall apart? How do they grieve? Second example, there's this collector of rare succulents, and she's targeted by a con man who pretends to fall in love with her so he can steal cutoffs of her succulents. So ultimately, a good premise contains some sort of conflict, some sort of relationship between different people, and then just a thought-provoking idea or premise. Now, the mistake that you should avoid if you're trying this is don't make them too detailed. You're not writing like a whole page summary of like what's going on in the story. No, you're just given a little pitch, just a 1 to 2 sentence little teaser that makes the reader interested in reading it. The third thing that you can do on the daily to level up your writing skills is to to write one killer first line per day. So every day, try to write one great opening line. And I don't mean a line that's connected to your work in progress at all, right? Just kind of a random line, a line that intrigues the reader and makes them want to read more. And I have done this one too. Once again, these aren't like random exercises I've just like thought up. Like these are things I've really done. And I'll show you two examples. Richard Garlong Champion III, all right, so that name's doing a little bit of work right there, believed that even though he had never ridden a horse, it would come naturally to him. All right, so we're eager to see as readers, is that horse riding going to go well? I mean, probably not. He seems a little overconfident. Or check out this first line. One flash meant danger, two flashes meant it was safe, but that night she saw three flashes from beyond the bog, and they had never talked about what three flashes meant. We got a little mystery. Who is this person, sending these little flashlight flickers? What does three mean? Like, okay, that gets the story started. Now, when you have to write sentences that are connected to a project, you're sort of burdened with the responsibility of making it fit with everything else. But the joy of just writing a standalone killer first line is that you're practicing the pure art of seduction. Like, what is one line that I can write that will force the reader to read the next sentence? Now, I've done this before with writers, and it's honestly staggering how much better they get over the course of a month. You do this every single day, and like at the end, you are 1,000 times more skilled at doing this than when you started. Now, Gillian Flynn is really good at writing great first lines, but her very favorite one comes from her novel, Dark Places. I have a meanness inside me, real as an organ. She said once she got that first line, she was able to write the whole rest of the book. Before that point, she was sort of floundering around. She didn't know how to write it. But once that line came to her, it crystallized for her, oh, like this is the entryway into this book. Now, one thing you should watch out for is that you don't want to write informational lines that don't create questions in the mind of the reader. Here is a bad first line. Detective Marcus Cole had worked homicide for 15 years. Okay, I mean, does that create any curiosity? Does it make the reader want to know anything more about this person? No, it does not. So what would be a much better line? After 15 years of working homicide, that's the information part, right? But we know this sentence is going somewhere else. Detective Marcus Cole was being forced into retirement. Okay, now we have some questions. Who is forcing him? Why are they forcing him? Is it his fault? And lastly, if you're gonna do this, here are two variations that you can do. One is you could try to write 10 different first lines for one particular novel and just see which one you like the best. The second variation you can do is try to write a first line in a genre you don't write at all. Like if you mainly write romance, try a literary novel or try a sci-fi or try fantasy or something. Sometimes that frees up your creativity and it's easier to get out a good first line. You are going to like this next one, and I would wager that you haven't heard it before. It is number 4, write a character bio for a friend. So take someone you know well and write a bio as if they were a fictional character in your novel. Their backstory, their personality, their contradictions, their desires. Now, why should you do it on a real person rather than an invented one? Well, really, you're learning how to create a real person by looking at, an actual real person. I think sometimes when we invent characters from scratch, we slot them into certain types or certain tropes, and that's why they don't come off feeling real. But when you start with a living person and then actually figure out like what would they look like as a character, they end up coming off much more real. Now, once you have it down, feel free to like add a couple of fictional elements as well once you have like the core part down. So that way you're not just, copying people in your real life and they're going to point to your novel and be like, hey, that's me. So when you do this exercise, what should you include? Well, include their defining wound. Like what is the one trauma that created who they are as a person? Also add in what they want and what they need. And it's good if they have, say, 2 desires that are conflicting. Also add their self-deception. What does this person believe about themselves that isn't true? Now, a common mistake is if this is someone like you might not want to include their flaws, but you really should. Now, a good variation for this is to do this with someone that you dislike, your nemesis in real life. And I think the challenge here is making sure there's some good things about them as well, that it's not just like a pure 100% villain. So if you subscribe now, you won't miss that video. The 5th step that will definitely improve your writing skills is rewrite your weakest scene from yesterday. So if you're a third into your novel or halfway through your novel or something, I want you to think like, what do I think is my weakest scene that I've written so far? So ideally you wrote something yesterday, and I want you to think right now, was there anything I wrote that seemed a little rushed or slipshod? Okay, what I want you to do is try to rewrite that, but not look at the original scene. That part's very key. It's very important to rewrite this sight unseen, because sometimes when we're doing revision, we're leaning too heavily on the original version, and sometimes the original version is unsalvageable. What sight unseen does is it helps your brain sort of process through and sieve through the most important parts of that scene. Your memory will remember those most important parts, and you will incorporate that into the new version, but you have more freedom to like include all sorts of new stuff too. Really, this technique is a way to determine what is truly load bearing in a scene and what's truly working, and then what just needs to be left by the wayside. Okay, word to the wise though, do this with a scene that you think is like so-so, like kind of on shaky grounds. You don't want to do this with a scene that you already love. Like, no, let that one be. This isn't busy work that I'm asking you to do. It's a concrete way to improve your book and a concrete way to level up your writing skills. The sixth thing you should do every single day as a writer to get 1% better is to read a 1-star book review on Goodreads. Now, this sounds a little depressing, right? It's like, oh, what if people hate my book this much? Well, suck it up, Buttercup, because guess what? Everybody gets 1-star reviews. There is no author out there who publishes that don't get at least 1-star reviews. So I think the process of doing this helps prepare you psychologically for what's going to happen. But more importantly than that, if you really read the reviews, it's going to teach you, what do readers hate? It's so important to know that. It's so important to think about that. And I think if you read like 100 1-star reviews, it's going to teach you, okay, you know what, when particular characters do this, like that really turns some readers off. Or when the plot does this, whether that be plot holes or a bad ending, that is enough to earn a 1-star review. So once you get all of those themes and see all those patterns in these 1-star reviews, you want to sort of incorporate that and be like, okay, how can I write this book in a way to minimize, not eliminate, but to minimize the number of 1-star reviews I get? Now, sometimes 1-star reviewers, they just didn't like get the book, if you know what I mean. Like they're just not the right reader for it. And in that case, I mean, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. But there are other 1-star reviews that are very instructive, and they actually teach you something about what to avoid in your book. Focus on those. The seventh thing you should do to get 1% better at writing is to find the linchpin scene. So whatever you're reading right now, find the linchpin scene. Every great story has a linchpin moment, a moment that the entire story hinges upon, a pivotal moment that changes everything for these characters. This is a principle I talk a lot about in my book, The Linchpin Writer. Check that out if you haven't read a copy yet. But ultimately what you're trying to do is trying to identify these linchpin moments, and then you want to study them and figure out, all right, how did they pull this off? Is it a surprise? Is it a twist? Is it a decision? Is it a character death? And it's not always the midpoint or the climax where this happens. It's just really any moment where after it happens, the protagonist can't go back to being who they were. Now, why should you study these moments? Because these are the make or break moments in your novel. If you don't pull this section of your novel off, then you're gonna get a 1-star review. Now, these usually aren't very long. It might just be a page or two, but you wanna focus on how they're advancing the plot, how they're deepening characters, how they're raising stakes. Every single one of you need to be doing step number 8. Seriously, do not skip this one. It is read like a writer, not like a reader. So what is one of the best ways you can learn how to read as a writer? I suggest annotation. In layman's terms, I write in my books, and I write in them quite a lot. I annotate in 2 ways. The first one is I fill up the back pages of every book I read with lots and lots of big picture notes. And then the second thing I do is I always write in the margins. I'm always highlighting things. I'm always making observations about what's happening. Now, if you're just reading as a reader, you're just curious about, oh, what's gonna happen next in the story? If you're reading as a writer, you're asking yourself, what technique did this author use? What sort of effect is it having on the reader? And how can I steal it and use it for my own manuscript? Zadie Smith talks about this in her essay collection, Changing My Mind. She basically goes into a Kafka story and she breaks down, okay, this is what I'm thinking as I'm reading it. This is how you read as a writer and not just as a reader. So I literally do not read without a pencil. Like if I don't have a pencil in my hand, I am not reading. But if you're gonna do this well, there are 3 common mistakes you need to avoid. The first one I call annotating like an English major, where you're like, I think the theme here is isolation. What you really want to do is focus on more like technique type stuff. Like, oh, this particular passage is about this certain emotion, but I noticed the author never named that emotion. The second mistake is only reading good writers. You can learn a lot about writing through reading bad books, a lot about what to avoid. And then the third mistake that writers make is they create plot summaries in the back of the book just so they know, like, oh, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. That's not very helpful. What you want to do is have insight about why that next plot event happened, or what the technique was, how fast they moved from one plot to another plot point. And now it's time for our very last point, number 9. The 20-minute rule. Okay, you might have known this one was coming, right? But every single day, you need to be writing for 20 minutes. Not editing, not outlining, no, generative work, creating new material. Brandon Sanderson, in an interview he did with Tim Ferriss, said he writes between 2,000 and 2,500 words every single day. And if you look at that man's output, I fully believe it. And then Maya Angelou said that she wrote every single day from 6:30 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. So why am I suggesting 20 minutes a day rather than, word count like Brandon Sanderson or 7.5 hours like Maya Angelou? Well, for starters, this number is low enough that you can't talk yourself out of it. Like, if you're saying, oh, I need to write for 4 hours, sometimes it's tough to psych yourself up for that. 20 minutes, you're like, sure, I can do 20 minutes, that's no big deal. And really, the goal isn't 20 minutes, the goal is just showing up. The goal is just getting anything down on the page for that day. And sometimes 20 minutes will result in, getting 10 words written. That's okay. You had a bad day. No worries. Sometimes 20 minutes will turn into an hour and you'll get thousands of words down. The most talented person in my MFA, I thought, you know what? This guy's never going to make it, because he would write 2 short stories a year and that was it. Like, there just wasn't any production there. So don't be like that guy. Make sure to get words down on the page, even if they're not great words. Like, at least you're getting something down. You can always revise it later, but you can't revise a blank page. Do not forget to check out Bookfox Lab, because the window for applications is rapidly closing. And I hope that this video helped you become 1% better at writing today.